Hello guys, I hope everybody is doing well. And today we're going to start talking about chapter 5, which is about methods. Now, if you took CS108 with me in the fall, we did some methods before, but actually in Python they were called functions. In Java, functions are called methods. And you will often hear the terms methods and functions, and sometimes people mix them up. Normally, what I would say is the difference between methods and functions lies in the difference between different programming languages that you are using. Object-oriented programming languages like Java, they use the term methods. Non-object-oriented programming languages, often called procedural languages, use the term functions. So it's important to use the term methods for the things we're going to be doing. So far we have used a lot of methods, like in system.out.println, math.power, things like that. And essentially in this chapter, we're going to be writing our own methods. But first of all, let me show you why we need methods in the first place. So imagine we have a program that in which we will sort of like display like certain messages for people who are gonna come to your house. So imagine there is gonna be 5, 6, 10 visitors. Everybody who's gonna come in, we're just gonna display some kind of like, hello, welcome to my place, and I hope you enjoy your time. Something like that. So when the first visitor is coming in, we're just gonna display these 3 messages. The second guy is gonna come in, we're just gonna display these messages again. And then when the third visitor is coming in, we're just going to do the same thing again, etc. So just by looking at this program, a couple things to notice. One, we literally can say that our program is doing exactly the same thing over and over multiple times. So these 3 lines are essentially repeated down here, repeated down there, etc. The other thing you want to notice is pretty much there should be a better way to do it. I'm just gonna kind of like extract my, like part of my program and have them somehow. So essentially, when there is an event that's triggered, these statements are gonna run. Okay, so again, if you look over here, these 3 lines are essentially gonna be part of sort of like a body of your program. And whenever that body is called, we essentially, these 3 lines are going to happen over and over. So if I run my program, you can see essentially it's just, basic, like strings printed out, etc. And one thing, again, if you look into this program, what if I have 20 people coming in? Essentially, these 3 lines are going to be repeated 20 times, and it's not, it's just going to make our programs longer without really, making anything intuitive about our program. So in order to kind of go around this and be able to solve this issue, what we're going to do is we're going to define a method that essentially wraps all these 3 lines. So whenever I call the method, these 3 lines are just gonna run. Okay, so let me show you how would I do that. So in order to define a method, we're just gonna define a method called like display greeting. I mean, you can call it anything you want. Now when it comes to methods, a good practice is actually to have, especially like in this case, we have a couple different like words in the method name, display and greeting. For display, or the first word, a good practice is to use a lowercase letter for the first character of the word, and then you would capitalize the first character of every word after the first word. So in this case, for greeting, we used uppercase G. So if you remember when we talked about classes, typically the practice is uppercase uh, letter for the first character of the class name. Essentially, in functions, it's kind of different. It's lowercase character for the first word, and then for every word afterwards, we're just going to use uppercase. So typically for methods, the way we write them is as follows. So it's normally public. We haven't talked about these before, but I'm not sure if we're going to talk about them in 111. Maybe afterwards just going to explain the difference between public, private, and protected. But for now, assume everything is public. So public, static, these have to appear exactly as they are. Now this is actually a void, and we're just going to, maybe in the next video, I'm just going to explain to you the difference between different return types. And then the method name. Now, if you go to the slides in chapter 5, it kind of tells you pretty much how a method would look like. So public static return type, and then the method name. And then whatever parameters they actually, a method would take, and then the method body. So essentially, this method really takes no input, and I just want to keep it really simple in the beginning. And then we have the method body. And then essentially in here, we're just going to say, once this method is called, what's going to happen. So in this case, I will just take these 3 lines, cut them, and then just paste them down here. So now, let me just actually remove these. So now imagine when someone comes in, what we're going to do is, rather than having these 3 lines, I'm just going to actually say, we'll display greeting. And this is actually called, essentially, this is called function call, or method call in this case. So what's going to happen is, remember, in your program, the order in which statements are going to run, we start in the main. And then the first thing in the main is there is a call to display greeting, this one. So when you call it, essentially, it's just going to go line by line. So all these 3 lines are just going to run. So now if I run my program, you will notice these 3 lines actually appear in the output, although I just have essentially one function call in my main program. So now imagine I'll have just a separator, and then another guy comes in. I'm just going to call the function one more time. So display greeting. And then when I actually run this, see, these are 3 lines. So because of the function call, and then essentially once this function or this method is actually called, the control of your program goes back up to the main. This is done. The separator is actually called is called in here. And then the method display greeting is called again on line 21. And that explains the 3 lines that are part of the output. Okay, so in your program, you can define as many methods as you want. There is no limit on how you would, on how many methods or how many method calls that you can define. Typically, if you write any program, you will end up writing so many different methods because if you compare the length of your program with methods and without methods, for sure, your program with methods is a lot simpler and a lot less lines and also a lot more intuitive. That's why you would actually do something like this. So now, imagine, in this case, let's define another method. So let's say this one, I'm just gonna actually change my comments here. So people coming in, and then another method for people leaving, and that's gonna be again public static void display goodbye in this case, and then I will just do out thanks for visiting. Now this method, it's perfectly fine, there is no problems, but if I run my program, there is no change. The reason is I have not called the method from my main method up here. So if I want to actually, you know, execute this method, I have to call it. So now, person left. So I need actually to call display goodbye. So now I just say display. I think I fixed it. Yeah. So now if I see it, here is kind of again this runs. The separator I put here, display goodbye. So thanks for visiting. And then I have another person coming, so we call this method one more time. Let's just actually display goodbye one more time down here. And then if you want to do a separator, pretty much that's what you're gonna get at the end. So the separator and then thanks for visiting. Okay. Now one quick thing which I'm gonna touch on in my next video is each of these methods, display greeting and then display goodbye, you're gonna notice they really don't deal with numbers. All what they do is just system out. So they're just printing things on the screen and there is nothing special about them. When a method only prints something on the screen, just like what we have up here, the return type is actually void. Remember, I think we talked about this in class before. Void means there is nothing to be returned. So essentially now when the method executes, there is nothing expected much out of that method. What we're going to talk about in the next video is, let's say I take two numbers and then I'm just going to add them together, and those two numbers are integers. The method that's going to do the add is going to return a data type, which is an integer also. So we're going to actually change the void into something like an integer or a double. In some cases, it might be like string or boolean. But essentially, you get the point. So for now, to make it really simple, what we're doing is really, printing things on the screen. That's why it's void. It's really so simple. So in our next video, we're just gonna touch on different return data types, as well as what if I have some data called arguments that I want to pass to my methods. So if for instance, I want to add two numbers together, essentially I need to give the method the two numbers I'm adding together. So that's going to be our things we're going to talk about next. So I hope that makes sense. If you have questions, feel free to ask me. I'll be happy to help, and make sure you utilize the discussion forums on ECN. Thank you guys. I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.